Welcome back, dear viewers. You're still watching a breakfast show live on Nile TV International. It's now time for a second topic of discussion for today. And in this segment, we will talk about Egypt's firm tendency to give political priority to advancing and developing relations with African countries in light of the historical ties and the common strategic interests that link Egypt to the countries of the African continent. And to shed more light on this topic, we're most delighted to be joined over the phone by Ambassador Soad Shalaby, former Assistant Foreign Minister. A very good morning, Ambassador, and thank you so much for joining us on The Breakfast Show.
Good morning. Thank you for inviting me.
The pleasure is all ours, Ambassador. First of all, how do you view President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi's keenness to communicate with the leaders of the African countries through mutual visits, phone calls, and participations in all the meetings and summits held in the continent?
Well, this explains, of course, his. Yesterday he attended the 29th meeting of the Africa Export-Import Bank annual meeting, which was held in the administrative capital. And this shows that President Sisi is very keen on putting Africa as a priority in our political and our foreign policy. And of course, the historical ties between Egypt and Africa explains that Egypt and Africa have a lot of very close relations with mostly all the African countries and with the African Union.
Ambassador, also there were several agreements and MOUs that were signed with different African countries. How do you see that these MOUs and bilateral ties and partnerships would support the economic integration of Egypt within the African continent?
Yes, of course. Egypt was one of the first countries to ratify the African continent free trade agreement, and this has helped all the other African countries to join, because Egypt is a leader in the field of economic integrity between Egypt and all the African countries, and MOUs that have been signed between Egypt and its African neighbors and African sisters and brothers are a very good sign that Egypt wants to export its products and want to ensure the elimination of barriers between trade between Egypt and other African countries. So the investment in trade and in exporting our products to all the African countries that are in need of our products is very important. It's highlighted always in the MOUs that has been signed between us and also during the meetings that are taking place, the bilateral meetings and the joint committees and the business meetings between Egypt and African countries, governments.
Ambassador, in light of Egypt hosting the COP27 scheduled for later this year in November in Sharm el-Sheikh, what do you think are the most important recommendations expected to decrease the climate change negative effects on the African continent?
Well, as you know, that Africa is mostly bearing the brunt of the climate change that is happening in the world. Africa is affected by the climate change, but it's not producing the climate the climate crisis. So the COP27 should focus on how to save Africa from the challenges of the climate change during in the past 20, 30 years, and after the crisis of the climate, Africa has suffered a lot. That is why the continent should act to accelerate the decarbonization of all aspects of the economy and to have a green economy. And they have to underline the importance of the efficient management of the abundance of natural resources of the continent. So they need to also strengthen Africa's industrial and technological development in the field of industry. And also COP27 should focus on financial support for all the African countries who are suffering from climate change in order to be able to face all these challenges.
Ambassador, also speaking about the importance of fostering economic relations between Europe and Africa, President Fattah al-Sisi has participated in the African-European Summit that was held last February in the Belgian capital, Brussels. Can you please elaborate on that?
Yes, of course. We have played a big role in linking the investments of Europe to that have to be that have to support the investments. The industry in Africa. That means that when President Sisi attended this meeting and other meetings also in Germany and in when he was member of the G20, he requested the big countries, the big financial institutions to support the investment opportunities in Africa and to invest in manufacturing the natural resources that are very very rich in African countries, and of course to use also the human resources that are present, because Africa has a large percentage of youth. It is 1.3 billion population, so more than half are youth. So it is very important to use the natural resources with the investments of Europe in Africa, and to also fight the inflation that is happening now, and to fight the food crisis and the oil crisis by investing in new and renewable energy to use the natural resources that Africa have.
Indeed, Ambassador Soad Shalaby, former Assistant Foreign Minister for African Affairs, we really appreciate your insight and thank you so much for joining us on The Breakfast Show. And dear viewers, by this we wrap up today's episode of The Breakfast Show. You're in the company of myself, Karim Gamaluddin, and my colleague Dina Hussein. Until we meet again, this goodbye.